"Get that black girl out of here. She doesn't belong in a place like this." That sentence didn't come from some dark alley or backwoods diner. It echoed through the Silver Lantern, one of Chicago's most exclusive, high-end restaurants, where aged whiskey flows smoother than apologies, and power hides behind pressed suits and six-figure tabs. The man who said it didn't even flinch. He didn't whisper. He wasn't drunk. He just said it like it was a fact. Like Ayanna Cade was a stain on the tablecloth of his world. And Ayanna? She didn't flinch either. She stood there, dark brown skin radiant under the soft golden lights, tray steady in her right hand, eyes like sharpened glass. She wore her uniform like armor, crisp white button-down black vest, not a wrinkle in sight, hair tied neatly, lip gloss subtle but sure. Her whole presence said, "I've earned this space." But that didn't stop the room from going still. A fork clinked on china. A sommelier froze mid-pour. Even the jazz trio in the corner lost the beat for half a second. Ayanna slowly turned her head toward the man. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The silence said enough. But here's what the man and this entire restaurant didn't know. Ayanna Cade wasn't just a waitress. She was a weapon with a gentle smile. And tonight, she was about to be tested. Minutes after that insult, 5 men entered the Silver Lantern. They didn't wear masks or flash guns, but their presence was heavy, tactical, calculated. They weren't here for dinner. They were here for Marcus Holloway, billionaire tech CEO, seated quietly in the VIP booth, sipping 60-year-old scotch like it was water. A man used to dodging lawsuits, not fists. But violence has a way of changing zip codes. Tonight, it wore cologne and expensive shoes. They thought this would be easy: intimidate, threaten, walk out richer. They didn't count on her. They didn't know that Ayanna had grown up on the South Side, dodging stray bullets and sharp words, that she'd taken self-defense classes her whole life because her mother refused to let her daughter be a statistic, that behind those calm eyes was a memory of every time someone said she couldn't, shouldn't, wouldn't. They didn't know she was about to make them regret walking through that door. And neither did Marcus. What you're about to see isn't just a fight in a fancy restaurant. It's the kind of moment that flips the script. It's what happens when a woman who's been disrespected, underestimated, and overlooked finally says enough. This is more than a brawl. This is a black story, one written in silence, sweat, and survival. And at Hidden Worth, we don't tell tales of superstars. We tell the stories of the ones they never saw coming. So if you've ever walked into a room and felt like you didn't belong, if you've ever been told, directly or indirectly, to sit down, shut up, and stay small, then this story? This one's for you. Hit subscribe if you believe power doesn't always wear a title. Stay with us if you know quiet strength is still strength. And remember, the most dangerous person in the room might just be carrying your appetizer. Let's begin. Ayanna Cade didn't grow up thinking she'd one day be standing in a $300 a plate restaurant, serving bone marrow and imported truffle pasta to Chicago's wealthiest elite. She grew up 3 train stops south of that world in a neighborhood where you learned early how to read people, dodge trouble, and never walk home with both earbuds in. Her mom, Lucille Cade, worked 2 jobs: daycare during the morning, home health aide at night. Her dad, Isaiah, ran a small boxing gym that was more about keeping kids off the streets than making money. Ayanna spent most evenings there, watching her dad rap knuckles and lecture young boys about footwork, discipline, and keeping your chin down in more ways than one. She learned how to throw a proper jab before she learned algebra, not because she wanted to fight, but because her dad believed that every black girl should know how to protect herself in every sense of the word. "You don't have to swing first, baby," he used to say, "but you damn sure better know how to swing back." Ayanna wasn't loud. She wasn't the kind of girl who raised her hand first or craved attention. She observed. She noticed. She remembered. When her classmates whispered gossip, Ayanna was the one silently connecting the dots. When someone lied, she saw it in their shoulders before she heard it in their words. By the time she was 16, she'd become an expert in human behavior without even trying. Her mother said it was intuition. Her father said it was training. But Ayanna, she knew it was survival. She watched her mom get overlooked in grocery stores, watched people talk over her dad in meetings, watched the way security guards eyed her cousins in the mall, like trouble wore skin the same shade they did. It wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was the smile that didn't quite reach someone's eyes, the resume that didn't get called back, the server who brought the check to the white couple instead of them. Microaggressions, macro wounds. But Ayanna didn't grow bitter, she grew sharper. While other kids joined cheer squads or theater, she spent weekends in her dad's gym. She didn't train for tournaments. She trained for life. She learned how to read weight distribution, how to anticipate movement, how to react fast without panicking. Her mother, on the other hand, gave her different tools. Lucille taught her how to read people emotionally, how to hear the sentence behind the words, how to stay poised when someone tried to make you feel small. She who stays calm, her mom would whisper during long nights over warm tea, wins the room. And so Ayanna moved through the world like a quiet storm. Not loud, not flashy, but impossible to ignore once you paid attention. By 21, she had earned an associate degree in hospitality management, and while she could have aimed for a hotel gig or corporate role, she chose the Silver Lantern. Why? Because she wanted to study the rich up close. She wanted to know what power looked like, sounded like, behaved like, when it wasn't trying to sell you anything. The restaurant didn't hire her at first. They said she lacked fine dining experience. That was code. Ayanna knew it. But she showed up every week, resume in hand, smile in place, and presence undeniable. Until one night, the head maitre d' got sick, and the restaurant was desperate. She stepped in, handled a table of German diplomats like she'd been born doing it. And just like that, she was in. But she never forgot how they looked at her that first day. Like she was lucky to be there. Like she should be grateful for the scraps. She wasn't. Ayanna believed in excellence, in dignity, in showing up and doing your damn job better than anyone else in the room, not to prove something to them but to prove something to herself. And now, here she was. 5 years into her role, the highest requested server at the Silver Lantern, elegant, efficient, sharp as glass. Guests loved her, staff respected her. Even the owner, a man notorious for forgetting names, never mispronounced hers. But despite all that, the looks still came. The comments still slipped. Like tonight. And if Ayanna had learned one thing in all those years, it's that no matter how quietly you carry your strength, the world will eventually try to test it. So when those 5 men walked in, when that insult flew across the table like a punch thrown from a place of privilege, Ayanna didn't react. She remembered. She remembered every lesson her father taught her with calloused hands. Every silent strategy her mother passed down over peppermint tea. She remembered who she was. And tonight, they were all about to remember her too. The first time Marcus Holloway walked into the Silver Lantern, no one recognized him. He wasn't the kind of billionaire who needed an entourage or a camera crew. He moved like he belonged because he did. His tailored charcoal gray suit didn't scream wealth, but it whispered it with confidence. His watch, understated yet custom, reflected just enough light to catch a trained eye. His shoes, Italian leather, moved across the marble floor like they owned it. Ayanna noticed. Not because he looked rich, plenty of men did, but because he looked heavy. Not physically, emotionally. He carried the kind of weight you couldn't measure in pounds or dollars. That night, he sat in the back booth, the one beneath the framed black and white photo of jazz legend, Miles Davis. He ordered a 1,961 Glenlivet, neat, and didn't touch it for the first 15 minutes. Just stared at it. Ayanna had served a lot of important men before: politicians, tech investors, athletes. But Marcus, he didn't flinch when people stared, didn't react to whispers. He was present, but somewhere else entirely. Like he was waiting for a ghost to sit across from him. That's when she knew he wasn't new money. He was old pain. In the weeks that followed, he returned. Always alone, always the same drink, always the same booth. He never asked for Ayanna, but the host knew. She was the only one he'd let refill his glass without a word. The only one who didn't make small talk. The only one who understood that silence could be sacred. Eventually, the whispers caught up. That's Marcus Holloway, founder of Nextcore, worth $3.8 billion, lost his wife in a car crash, hasn't spoken to the press since. Ayanna didn't care much for tech gossip, but she read between the lines. He wasn't there to be seen. He was there to remember. Tonight was different, though. Marcus arrived earlier than usual, 6:30 sharp. The rain hadn't even started yet. He stepped out of a matte black Escalade, nodded to the valet, and walked straight in, shaking off his coat like he was brushing off the day. His eyes swept the room once before landing, of course, on that booth. But as he sat down, something shifted. Ayanna caught it instantly. He was tense, not just tired. He kept glancing toward the entrance, fingers tapping softly against the base of his whiskey glass, his jaw tighter than usual, his breathing shallow but deliberate, like someone trying to control it. She approached calmly, placing the drink in front of him without a word. His eyes met hers, sharp, alert, like a man bracing for impact. "Everything all right, Mr. Holloway?" she asked, her voice low, private. He paused, then gave a small nod. "Just a long day," he said. "Longer night coming." It wasn't the words, it was the way he said them, as if they were a warning, as if he knew something she didn't and was preparing for it. Ayanna stepped back, but didn't turn away. Her instincts, finely tuned from years of watching men like him, told her this wasn't just another evening. Something was coming. She scanned the restaurant quickly. The couple celebrating an anniversary near the window. The older man from the state senate with his mistress at table 7. The two corporate bros at the bar trying too hard to act like regulars. Nothing out of place. And yet everything was. Back at the booth, Marcus reached inside his jacket, pulled out a sleek black phone, typed a message, and slipped it away. Then he looked around the room once more, like a man about to be hunted. Ayanna knew that look. She'd seen it on men walking into her father's gym with fresh bruises and broken pride. She'd seen it on mothers clutching purses a little tighter on the subway. She'd seen it on herself, in mirrors, the night after a near-miss walk home. It was the look of someone trying to prepare mentally, emotionally, maybe even physically for what comes next. But this time, it wasn't a street corner or a boxing ring. It was a 5-star dining room. And the fight hadn't started yet. Still, Ayanna could feel it in her bones. Marcus Holloway hadn't come to eat tonight. He'd come to survive. It started the way it usually does, soft, subtle, dressed up in good manners. The kind of racism that doesn't raise its voice but still clears a room. Ayanna had just placed Marcus Holloway's drink down when she turned to greet the party at table 11, a group of 4 well-dressed guests, clearly business associates, mid-40s, all white, all talking with the kind of volume that said, "We run things, and we want everyone to know it." "Good evening," Ayanna said, her voice warm but professional. "Welcome to the Silver Lantern. May I offer you our seasonal wine list or get you started with some sparkling?" One of the men, tall, gray suit, bright red tie, looked her up and down like she was a product he hadn't ordered. "Actually," he said, tilting his head, "can we get someone who knows the menu? Like, really knows it?" The table chuckled lightly. Ayanna smiled, but not the kind that reached her eyes. "I've been with the Lantern for 5 years, sir. I know every item on and off the menu." The man waved a dismissive hand. "No offense, just want someone experienced." Another man at the table chimed in. "No offense, huh? That's like punching someone and saying, 'It's just business.'" He laughed. The others did too. Ayanna didn't laugh. She stood tall, adjusted the corner of her notepad, and replied calmly, "Of course, I'll let my manager know you'd like reassignment." She walked away, head high, not a single misstep in her stride. But inside, it burned. This wasn't new. This wasn't shocking. It was Tuesday. The kind of thing that happened often enough to feel routine, but never enough for anyone to call it what it was. Later that evening, she overheard one of the junior servers whispering to a new hire, "Yeah, Ayanna's great, but some guests, they just aren't comfortable with her. You know how old money can be. You know how old money can be." Like it was an explanation. Like it made sense. Like being born into privilege gave you permission to treat someone like a second-tier human being. Ayanna didn't confront them. She didn't have to. The words stuck to the air like smoke from a cheap cigar. They lingered. They weighed down the room. In the kitchen, one of the line cooks, a Dominican guy named Felix, who'd always treated her like a queen, leaned over and said, "You good?" Ayana nodded. Always. And she was. But that didn't mean it didn't sting. Because it wasn't just one table. It was the woman who double-checked her receipt, like Ayana had overcharged her on purpose. It was the guy who handed his credit card to a white server standing 2 feet behind her. It was the couple who made a joke about diversity hires when they thought she couldn't hear. Every little moment like that wasn't just a scratch. It was a reminder that to some people, her skin tone would always come before her name tag. Before her professionalism. Before her grace. Before her damn humanity. But Ayana? She had long ago decided she wouldn't shrink herself to fit anyone's comfort zone. She wouldn't raise her voice or make a scene that wasn't her style. Instead, she would let her work speak louder. She would remember every face, every slight, every smirk and outclass them anyway. Because the greatest revenge was always excellence. And tonight, that excellence was needed more than ever. Back at Marcus's booth, she refilled his glass without a word. He nodded, grateful. But something in his eyes shifted. He had heard the exchange. Maybe not all of it, but enough. "You don't deserve that," he said quietly. Ayana blinked. "Neither do you," she replied. Just 5 words. But in that moment, a connection formed, silent, mutual, and unshakable. 2 people, used to being misjudged. 2 people who'd had rooms underestimate them before they spoke. 2 people who understood that sometimes the loudest battles are the ones you fight by simply showing up again tomorrow. And neither of them knew it yet, but they were about to be tested like never before. Because racism doesn't always come with a hood or a slur. Sometimes it wears cufflinks. Sometimes it orders the chef's special. And sometimes, it walks in the door 5 men deep. The rain hit the windows like a slow drum roll. Outside, the city glowed under the weight of another Chicago night, wet sidewalks, red brake lights, the occasional gust of wind throwing tree branches against the glass like a warning nobody wanted to hear. Inside the silver lantern, everything was polished and pristine. Crystal stemware, white linen tablecloths, soft jazz playing low, like a secret you had to lean in to hear. Nothing felt out of place. But Ayana felt it. The shift. It was something in the air, like the way a dog senses thunder before it strikes. She noticed Marcus Holloway glancing toward the door more often than usual. His posture, normally relaxed, had gone rigid. He tapped the rim of his glass in a rhythm too exact to be casual. Not anxious but alert. His eyes scanned the room not like a man enjoying dinner, but like a man preparing for war. Ayana clocked it all. And then, at exactly 7:04 p.m., the front door opened. The man who stepped in didn't smile. He didn't check in with the host. He didn't even pause. He was tall, mid-40s, shaved head, navy coat, still damp from the rain. He moved like someone used to getting through rooms without asking permission. A few seconds later, the door opened again. Another man, slightly shorter, square jaw, black leather gloves, even indoors, no umbrella, no small talk, just walked straight to the bar and sat without ordering. Then a third. Then a fourth. By the time the 5th man entered wearing a dark green trench coat, eyes scanning the perimeter like he was reading floor plans, Ayana knew. This wasn't coincidence. They weren't together, but they were together. They didn't huddle, didn't speak, but their spacing was deliberate. One by the bar, one near the hallway to the restrooms, one posted near the emergency exit. One sat with his back to Marcus's booth, but his eyes, reflected in the mirror behind the bar, never left him. The last one? He stood, didn't take a seat, just watched. Ayana glanced toward the manager's station. Empty. Great. The assistant manager had stepped outside for a smoke break. The security guy was in the back helping unload a delivery. The floor was hers. And she was standing in the middle of something that hadn't officially happened yet, but was definitely coming. She moved calmly, like nothing was wrong, and made her way to the service station. From there, she had a full view of the floor. Her instincts screamed. Something about their body language, the way they didn't fidget, the way none of them touched a menu or looked at their phones. Their hands were either on the table or in plain sight, military, professional, purposeful. Marcus hadn't moved, but his hand was now resting on something inside his jacket. Ayana's breath slowed. She scanned the room again. Nothing out of place if you weren't looking hard. But she had spent her whole life looking hard. Table 11 was still being loud, oblivious. The jazz trio had just switched to a slower number. The kitchen bell rang order up. And yet, she couldn't hear anything over the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Then the man with the shaved head stood and walked straight toward Marcus's booth. No hesitation. Ayanna stepped into his path before she even realized her feet were moving. "Sir," she said, voice polite but firm. "Can I help you with something?" He stopped, looked her up and down, didn't speak, just gave a small smile, not friendly, not aggressive, just calculated. "I'm here to speak with Mr. Holloway," he said calmly. "It's a private matter." Marcus's voice came from behind her. "Let him through, Ayanna." She turned her head, just enough to see him nod once. The man brushed past her without another word and slid into the booth across from Marcus like he'd reserved it. The other four stayed in position. Ayanna didn't move far. She took 3 slow steps back, turned to the bar, and picked up a tray, just enough to stay close without drawing attention. But her mind was racing. Something was going down, maybe blackmail, maybe a threat, maybe worse. She didn't know yet. But she was about to find out. And when she did, they'd all wish they had chosen another restaurant. The first blow didn't come with fists. It came with silence. Heavy, dense, unnatural silence. The kind that rolls in just before something shatters. At Marcus's booth, the man with the shaved head leaned in and placed something small and black on the table. No one else saw it. But Marcus did. Ayanna saw the shift in his shoulders, the way he suddenly stopped breathing through his nose. Whatever it was, USB drive, encrypted device, some kind of leverage, it changed everything. "You have 5 minutes," the man said quietly, almost politely. "You know what's on it. Hand over the access code." Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the man like he was memorizing his face for later. Then, slowly, he reached into his coat. Ayanna's eyes locked onto his hand. So did the 4 other men in the room. "Don't," the bald man warned. "You make one sudden move, and this room gets painted." That's when everything snapped. Marcus froze. The man at the emergency exit reached into his jacket. And Ayanna moved. She didn't run, didn't scream. She simply stepped forward, tray in hand, as if delivering water. Except this time, the tray had a heavy-bottomed wine decanter on it, crystal, solid, and perfectly balanced in her grip. Just before the man near the exit could draw fully, Ayanna swung. Hard. The tray flew from her hand like a discus, slamming straight into his wrist with a sickening crack. The object he was holding, some sort of collapsible baton, clattered to the floor. The man roared in pain. Guests turned. Conversations stopped. Marcus stood suddenly, knocking over his chair. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. Panic flooded the room like a tidal wave. The man at the bar dove behind a column. Another flipped a table. The one closest to Marcus lunged across the booth, but Marcus was ready. He sidestepped, driving his shoulder into the man's gut and slamming him into the marble pillar behind them. Ayanna didn't stop. She snatched a metal water pitcher from a nearby table and ducked just as a chair was thrown across the room. One of the attackers was yelling now, giving orders. "Secure him, get the drive, take her out." Take her out. She turned just in time to see a man charging toward her with the kind of focus that meant he wasn't worried about who she was. Just what she stood between. She pivoted. Years of muscle memory kicked in. She slid her foot behind his, dropped her weight low, and swept his legs clean off the ground. He hit the floor hard, and before he could recover, she flipped the pitcher in her hand and brought it down on his shoulder. Not enough to kill. Just enough to keep him down. People were screaming. Servers ducked under tables. Plates shattered. A waiter slipped on spilled wine. The jazz trio? Gone. Instruments left behind. Ayanna's chest heaved. Her eyes scanned the room. One attacker was still upright, red tie, black gloves, sprinting toward Marcus now with a stun baton lit and buzzing. "Marcus!" she shouted. Too late. The man lunged, and then stopped. Frozen. Not from fear, but because Ayanna was already airborne. She launched from a nearby booth, using the cushioned seat as a springboard. She didn't think, didn't plan, she just moved. She collided with the attacker mid-run, driving her knee into his side and knocking the baton loose. It skittered across the floor. They both went down. The impact knocked the wind out of her, but she rolled fast, used her elbow to pin his neck, and with one final push, shoved him off. By now, the restaurant was mayhem. Glass everywhere, a fire alarm screaming, a woman crying behind a wine cart, staff hiding in the kitchen. And in the center of it all, Ayanna, standing over 3 unconscious men and 1 disarmed, groaning in pain. Marcus stood beside her, bleeding from his lip, eyes wide with something between shock and awe. "You all right?" she asked, breathing heavy. He nodded slowly. "You're not just a waitress," he said. Ayanna looked around the wreckage, her uniform torn at the sleeve, hair loose, heart pounding. "No," she said, "not tonight." Ayanna didn't remember deciding to move. Her body did it before her brain had the chance to catch up. That was the thing about growing up where she did. You didn't plan your reactions, you trained them. And once you trained them, they never left you. Even if you wrapped yourself in silk vests and luxury dining rooms, the fire stayed lit underneath. And tonight? The fire was burning hot. As the chaos settled into a strange, pulsing silence, she crouched low beside the unconscious man she'd just taken down. His coat had slipped open. Inside was a concealed holster, empty now but not by much. She spotted the handle of a blade still tucked behind his waistband. Not amateurs. This wasn't intimidation. This was precision. This was an extraction gone sideways. Ayanna stood slowly, chest heaving, heart thudding against her ribs like a drumline. But her mind sharp, focused, detached, every sense on high alert. Marcus had backed against the booth again, breathing heavy, watching her like she'd grown a second head. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, voice low, a mix of awe and disbelief. Ayanna didn't answer. Because the question wasn't new. People had been asking it out loud, in looks, in assumptions her whole life. Who is she? What's a girl like that doing here? What else is she hiding? And now, finally, she was showing them. She moved across the restaurant with silent steps, knees slightly bent, scanning the angles, checking for the next threat. Her eyes locked onto the last man still standing, the one near the bar, the one who hadn't moved since it all began. He was different, calm, watching, waiting. He met her gaze and gave the smallest nod. She knew that look. He was the real leader. He hadn't lifted a finger because he hadn't needed to. Not yet. Ayanna took a slow breath. Inhale. Count to 3. Exhale. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. Stillness before strategy. Calm beats chaos. Your mind is your strongest weapon. She glanced at the tray station, metal tongs, pepper mill, folded napkins, wine opener. Useless to most. But to her, tools. Her foot slid slightly to the left, weight distributed evenly, shoulders loose, elbows in. If he moved, she'd move faster. But he didn't. Instead, he finally spoke. "You're not just some waitress," he said calmly. "You trained somewhere. Police? Military?" Ayanna shook her head once. "No badge, no uniform, just life." He smirked. "That makes you dangerous." She took one step forward. "Only to the wrong people." Then, in one smooth motion, he reached into his coat, not fast, not sharp, but with a practiced ease that said he'd done this before. Ayanna didn't hesitate. She slid forward, closing the distance in under a second, sweeping his arm outward while jabbing her elbow into his ribs. He didn't expect her speed. Didn't expect her accuracy. He stumbled, grunted, but recovered quickly. Too quickly. His arm hooked around her waist, tried to lift. She twisted, drove her heel into his shin, broke free. He came back with a backhanded swing that could have knocked most people cold. But Ayanna wasn't most people. She ducked under it, spun low, and swept his legs from beneath him in one clean arc. He hit the ground with a loud thud, air rushing out of his lungs. Still, he tried to rise. That's when Ayanna reached into his coat and pulled out what he'd been going for. A small, matte black device, about the size of a matchbox, no screen, no buttons, just a fingerprint scanner and a blinking green light. She held it up. "What's this?" she asked. The man coughed, winced, and muttered, "Your problem now." Marcus stepped closer, his face pale but steady. "That's the drive," he said. "They were sent for it." Ayanna didn't lower her hand. She was still scanning his face, his body, his breathing. He wasn't done. Even on the ground, this man was calculating. "More coming?" she asked him. He didn't answer. That was all the answer she needed. She turned to Marcus. "We need to get you out, now." He nodded, then hesitated. "You sure you're not security?" Ayanna allowed the smallest smile. "No, I'm something worse." The chaos had calmed, but the danger hadn't left. The men were down. The room was in pieces. Sirens could be heard in the distance, winding their way through the slick Chicago streets. But Ayanna wasn't thinking about the police. She was staring at Marcus. And he was staring right back. She held the small matte black device tight in her hand, the one the man at the bar had tried to reach, the one Marcus had risked his life over. It pulsed in her palm like a living thing. And yet, she wasn't focused on that anymore. Something about the way Marcus looked at her had changed. Not like she was an asset, but like she was a liability. "You knew they were coming," Ayanna said quietly. Marcus didn't flinch. "I had a feeling. You let this happen. You let me be in the middle of it." "I didn't expect you to be part of anything," he said. "You're a waitress." Ayanna laughed once dry, low, cold. "You've seen what I can do, and you still reduce me to a tray?" Marcus exhaled sharply. He wiped blood from his lip, then looked at her, really looked at her. "You want the truth?" he said. "You wouldn't have been in danger if you weren't here tonight." There it was. Blame wrapped in logic, guilt served cold. Ayanna stepped closer. She didn't raise her voice. That wasn't her style. But her words cut deep. "I've spent my life walking into rooms not built for people like me, carrying respect that no one offered, earning dignity that was never guaranteed. And tonight, I risked everything to save a man who sees me as in the way." Marcus looked away. And that's when she knew there was more. She took another step, her tone sharper now. "This isn't about a drive, is it?" Marcus tensed. Ayanna's mind raced. She remembered something years ago, a name, a lawsuit, a company that laid off hundreds in a single sweep. Her mother had cried at the kitchen table that night, not just because she lost her job, but because the severance package she was promised never came. That company? Nextcore. Marcus Holloway's empire. Ayanna's eyes narrowed. "You knew my name before tonight." Marcus didn't deny it. "You knew exactly who I was." Silence. And then finally, he nodded. "I remembered your mother, Lucille. She filed a complaint after the layoffs, said the HR rep lied about her benefits, that someone forged her exit paperwork." Ayanna's voice dropped. "That wasn't just someone." Marcus looked away again. His shoulders sagged. "It was me." That was it. The click. The moment where truth meets rage and the past crashes into the present. Ayanna's fists clenched, her whole body tensed, not from fear but fury. She had fought through discrimination, violence, and fear tonight, but nothing prepared her for this. He wasn't just a billionaire with a secret. He was the man who'd stolen her mother's livelihood, her family's stability, her future. "I should let them have you," she said softly. Marcus straightened. "You don't mean that." But Ayanna didn't move. Her muscles shifted, her stance widened. She wasn't sure if she was about to scream or strike. Marcus stepped forward. "Whatever I did back then, I was a different man. Young, ambitious, stupid. But this," he pointed to the shattered room, the unconscious bodies, the blood on both their clothes. "This isn't because of that. It's bigger." "I don't care if it's bigger," she snapped. "It still started with you." They stood face to face now. No more roles, no more titles. Just a man and a woman standing in the wreckage of a truth that had been buried for too long. Marcus looked down at the device in her hand. "If you keep that," he said, "they'll come again, harder." Ayanna stared at it. And then, without a word, she threw it across the room. It shattered against the wine cart, pieces scattering like broken promises. Marcus looked stunned. "You have 5 seconds," she said, voice like iron, "to decide what kind of man you want to be tonight." A long beat passed. Then Marcus picked up a white cloth napkin from the floor, tied it around his bleeding hand, and nodded. "I'm following you." Ayanna turned without another word, stepping over broken glass and toppled chairs. Because this fight wasn't over. But now, it was hers. Ayanna barely made it to the back hallway before she heard the click. Not the clumsy kind from a dropped spoon or broken plate. This was the cold, mechanical snap of a weapon being primed. She turned. He was there. The last man standing. The real one. The one who hadn't said much, hadn't needed to. The man who'd watched everything like a predator, sizing up terrain, measuring responses, calculating risk. Now he stepped forward, shedding the last layer of subtlety like an old coat. He wasn't pretending anymore. No more fake civility. No more hidden hands. He cracked his neck once, then rolled his shoulders. Ayanna recognized the stance. Boxing. Military hybrid. Elbows tight, knees soft, eyes locked. This man wasn't just trained. He was built for this. And tonight, he'd chosen her as the problem to eliminate. Behind her, Marcus took a step forward. "Stop," Ayanna said, hand raised. Her voice was low, clear, full of steel. "This one's mine." The man smiled, not wide, not cocky. Just, sure. "I've fought bigger," he said. Ayanna raised her fists. "You've never fought smarter." Then it began. No warning. No flashy moves. Just contact. His right hand shot out first, testing range, looking for a quick open. Ayanna blocked, pivoted on the ball of her foot, and countered with a sharp jab to his ribs. He took it and stepped back, not in pain, but in surprise. She moved fast. Cleaner than he expected. He adjusted. Came in low this time, aiming to grapple. She spun out, elbowed his jaw, and stepped aside. But he recovered quickly and delivered a brutal backhand that caught her across the cheek. Ayanna staggered. Vision blurred. Pain bloomed across her face. But she didn't fall. Didn't scream. She straightened slowly, spit blood on the floor, and reset her stance. He raised a brow. Tough. "Worse than that," she muttered. She came at him this time. 3 fast jabs, 1 fake. He blocked the first 2, fell for the third. Her knee drove into his thigh with force that made him grunt. He tried to clinch, to pull her in close, but she used his momentum, spinning out, wrapping her leg behind his, and slamming him shoulder first into the wall. The drywall cracked. He bounced back like a tank, headbutting her. She reeled. Lights danced behind her eyes. He shoved her, hard, and she hit the floor. Marcus shouted something behind her, but she couldn't hear. Everything was muted, heartbeat pounding, blood rushing in her ears. But she saw his boots moving toward her. And in that moment, something inside her lit up. Not anger. Not pride. Memory. She remembered her father's voice, calm and firm during one of their late-night gym sessions. "If you're ever on the ground, baby girl, remember you're still in the fight. You don't quit, you adapt." Ayanna's eyes snapped open. She grabbed a broken piece of chair leg beside her. Not elegant. Not planned. Just survival. As the man reached down to grab her by the collar, she twisted and jammed the wood straight into his gut, not deep, but enough to make him stagger. She kicked upward, caught him under the chin. He dropped to one knee, dazed. She didn't wait. Ayanna surged forward, wrapped her arm around his throat from behind, and locked her legs. A chokehold. Tight, controlled. He thrashed. She held. He slammed her into the wall, once, twice, but she didn't release. Blood pounded in her temples, her grip burned. And then, he went still. Ayanna waited 3 more seconds, then let go. He crumpled to the floor, out cold. She stood over him, gasping for air, hair wild, shirt ripped, arms trembling. Marcus stepped forward slowly. "Remind me not to get on your bad side," he said. Ayanna didn't answer. She looked down at her hands, still shaking. Not from fear. From release. The fight was over. At least this one. She looked up, eyes fierce. Let's finish this. Ayanna expected betrayal. She expected danger. She expected Marcus to be hiding something, but she did not expect what came next. The room was still, bodies slumped, glass shattered, sirens faint but approaching. Marcus supported himself against the booth, blood at the corner of his mouth. Ayanna stood over the motionless leader, chest heaving, grime smudged on her blouse. She dropped the broken device, bits of plastic, metal, buzzing circuitry into her palm. The small matchbox-sized thing that had set the night on fire. She looked up at Marcus. His eyes had softened. There was regret, hard-earned, heavy. Before she could speak, the restaurant's back door burst open. 2 suited men entered, weapons hidden, backup. One of them flashed an ID, Federal Special Investigations. Ayanna froze. Marcus exhaled sharply. They weren't here to arrest her. They weren't here for Marcus either, at least, not directly. The lead agent approached, badge reflected under the golden chandelier, voice low but firm. Mr. Holloway, Miss Cade, thank you for keeping this contained. We have warrants. We have oversight. We're here because someone paid to keep this drive secret. Someone with power. Ayanna's heart pounded. She thought Marcus had orchestrated the whole thing. She thought the betrayal began and ended with him. But as the agent spoke, a picture formed, one darker than Marcus's past, one more twisted than any resentment she'd nursed in her bones. Mr. Holloway, you were our target, but not for what people assumed. The Phoenix Drive isn't a weapon. It's not even entirely your invention. It's a safeguard. A failsafe created by multiple stakeholders, your company, your former partners, external regulators to monitor multiple biometric data leaks, device vulnerabilities, and corporate espionage. It was meant to be public in case of disaster, a shield for whistleblowers. Marcus clenched his jaw. That's true. Ayanna shook her head, confused. Then why did Sebastian Cross send those men? Cross, the leader she'd just defeated. The man whose smug satisfaction she still felt in her bones. You're not the only one who remembers what power can steal, Marcus said. The agent stepped closer. Cross has been manipulating you both. He leaked false accusations, fabrications that you, Mr. Holloway, were abusing clients' data. He stirred fear so this drive would be seen as dangerous, so people would pay him to destroy it. He sold certificates, influence over regulation, a promise he'd control the drives worldwide. You were his obstacle. Ayanna's stomach twisted. So all of it, the layoffs, the broken contracts, my mother was part of his plan? Marcus nodded. Pain flashed in his eyes. He used my company's weaknesses, used your family's complaint, used your name. He planted seeds of distrust. He leveraged every small injustice. The weight of vengeance flooded Ayanna's mind, not because she wanted revenge, because truth hurt. You used me, she said, voice shaking. You let me stand in danger, thinking I was protecting you, while you were preparing to expose me, to discredit me if I made a misstep. Marcus looked away. Yes, because without you taking that risk, there would be no witness, no credibility. Cross tried to paint you as the villain, the radical black waitress who injected herself into matters above her station. Something broke in her chest. He had intended to use her story, twist it into an article of shame. He assumed the world would believe it. But she had messed up his plan. Not out of his control, but because of her courage, her instinct, her refusal to be invisible any longer. The agent said, "We have Cross in custody. Your evidence, Miss Cade, combined with phone records, financial transfers. Cross had contracts with offshoot shell companies. The people who hired the 5 were acting under his direction." Ayanna looked down at her hands, trembles not of fear, but anger. Tears threatened not for pity, but for recognition of the cost. Marcus gently touched her arm. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." Ayanna pulled back. "Don't apologize for what I discovered. Apologize for what you thought I was." Marcus nodded, eyes hollow. "I thought I could protect you by keeping you in the dark." Her heart twisted. Protection is not hiding truth, not if it makes you complicit. Outside, police lights flickered through the front window. Patrons, shaken, were escorted out. The special investigations agents gathered evidence. Ayanna turned to Marcus. What now? He looked at the shattered tables, broken wine glasses, the mess his business, her bravery, and Sebastian's greed had caused. Now, he said quietly, we rebuild. We release the real narrative. We make the Phoenix Drive public. We ensure Cross's network can't reuse the same dirty pattern. She nodded. For the first time all night, her face was dry. The twist didn't erase the past. It didn't heal the wounds, but it revealed the truth. Marcus looked at her. You deserve credit, Ayanna. Not as a waitress, not as my employee, as the one who saw what everyone else ignored. She met his gaze. For all the anger, for all the betrayal, something shifted. She wasn't just a wild card in his story. She was a co-author now. The Silver Lantern was closed the next day. Not for repairs. Not for damage control. But for silence. For reflection. The kind of silence that follows chaos, not the absence of noise, but the weight of everything unsaid. Ayanna stood by the window in the upstairs lounge. Below, crime scene tape flapped in the wind. Media vans lingered at the curb. Everyone wanted a piece of the story, but Ayanna? She didn't want headlines. She wanted answers. Behind her, Marcus sat with 2 cups of coffee, one untouched, the other nearly empty. Agents cleared you, he said. Said you were acting in defense. Ayanna nodded. I know. They offered you a settlement, compensation for your role in saving my life. I said no. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Why? She turned, slowly, looking him in the eye. Because I'm not for sale. Not anymore. The words weren't cruel. They weren't even bitter. They were honest. Like stone beneath a stream, unmoved, unchanged, despite the pressure. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on knees. You could use that money. You could start something new. Something bigger. Ayanna tilted her head. Money is just another version of silence if it comes without change. That's what this was about. Change. Not revenge. Not reward. But the kind of transformation that costs something real. She held the new version of the Phoenix Drive in her hands, a transparent data block, encrypted, legally released, certified by a third party. What used to be leverage was now information. Neutral, available, and protected. But the question still loomed. Who should control it? The government? The press? Marcus? Her? You created this, she said. You had the power to use it as a weapon or a warning, and you stayed quiet until it nearly killed us both. Marcus looked away. I thought I could control it. I thought if I waited long enough, the problem would resolve itself. Ayanna gave a small, almost sad laugh. That's the lie power tells itself, that it can wait out justice. She sat across from him now. Calmer, not because the fight was over, but because she had something bigger than anger now. Clarity. I've been offered interviews, she said. Articles, podcasts, even a book deal. You should take it, he said. She shook her head. No, not unless the whole story is told. Not just what I did, but what you didn't do. He met her gaze. No defensiveness, no pride. Just acceptance. I'll tell it, he said. But not as a redemption arc, not to save your brand, she added. If you want to be involved in this, you have to relinquish ownership. This story, this data, it belongs to everyone. Not a company, not a CEO, not a survivor. It belongs to the people affected by it. Marcus nodded slowly. What do you want to do? Ayanna stood. She walked to the small wooden cabinet in the corner, opened it, and pulled out a dusty old notebook, her father's. Inside were pages of quotes, strategies, ethics. She flipped to the back. One of his rules, she said, tapping the page. When you hold something powerful, you have 3 choices. Hoard it, weaponize it, or liberate it. She closed the book. I'm choosing liberation. Marcus leaned back. You're going public? Ayanna nodded. With full transparency. I'll build a digital vault. Decentralized, peer-reviewed, open-source access. And it won't be in my name. It'll be neutral. For the people who deserve to know what was done with their data, what power did in the shadows. He studied her. That's going to make you a target. Ayana smiled faintly. I've been a target since the day I was born. This time, I get to choose why. The sun began to rise behind them, casting long gold rays across the city skyline. Marcus stood too. He extended his hand, not to offer a deal, not to apologize, but simply to stand beside her. She shook it, because this was no longer about blame, or fear, or power. This was about neutrality, not the kind that turns a blind eye, but the kind that holds a light in every direction and refuses to let it be dimmed. The kind that says, I see you, and I won't let you hide anymore. 3 weeks later, a different city, a different skyline, but the same weight on Ayana's shoulders. Washington, D.C. The nation's power pulsed beneath her feet like a quiet drum. Suits and stories crossed streets in sync. Deals were made in silence. Truth lived under red tape. But Ayana? She was done hiding beneath the surface. She walked through the marble halls of the Federal Data Oversight Committee building not as a whistleblower, not as a victim, not even as a hero, but as a witness. A woman who had lived the story no one wanted to believe until it hit them in the face. Flanked by 2 agents neutral, unsmiling, Ayana stepped into the chamber where a dozen elected officials waited behind polished desks and bottled water. Camera crews stood behind a one-way glass wall. This wasn't for news. It was for record. She approached the microphone, placed the new Phoenix Drive, the open-source version, on the table, and took a breath. My name is Ayana Cade, she began. I am not a government official. I am not a cybersecurity expert. I am not an executive. I am a waitress, or at least, I used to be. The room stilled. She continued, her voice calm but clear. 3 weeks ago, I stood in the middle of a luxury restaurant and fought off 5 trained men who were paid to destroy this device. They failed. Not because I was stronger, not because I had backup, but because I refused to let another lie survive one more day. She held up the device. This is the truth, not the one cleaned up by lawyers, not the version rewritten by press releases, but the truth we're owed, about data, about power, about how easy it is to lose control when we give it all to people who've never been held accountable. Somewhere behind the glass, a man coughed. Another scribbled notes. Ayana looked each of them in the eyes. You don't have to believe me, but you have to answer for what comes next. Because this time, it's public. This time, it can't be buried. When she stepped away from the podium, the silence was heavy but not empty. It was respect. Earned, not granted. As she exited the building, Marcus waited across the street, dressed in plain clothes, holding a to-go coffee in each hand. Speech was good, he said. Ayana raised a brow. You watched? Of course. You're the first person in years to make Congress look scared. She took the coffee, sipped once, and sighed. They should be. They walked together in silence for a while, past a statue covered in scaffolding, down a quiet block that smelled faintly of oak and old power. Marcus stopped. I'm dissolving the rest of the company, he said quietly, turning over the patents, creating a fund for every person hurt by what we built, intentionally or not. Ayana studied him. Not looking to be a martyr? No, he said, just trying not to be a coward anymore. She nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. You still think people like me don't belong in places like this? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. Then, carefully, I think people like you are the only reason places like this still stand. The sun was setting now. Soft gold stretched across the stone buildings. Ayana pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket. It was a printed version of her father's quote, the one she'd shared with Marcus. She taped it quietly to a streetlight pole. It read, When you hold something powerful, you can hoard it, weaponize it, or liberate it. Then, below in her handwriting, she chose liberation. They stood there a moment longer. No cameras. No applause. Just the quiet kind of ending that comes when you finally decide who you are. Ayana smiled, not because the world was fixed, not because justice had arrived, but because she knew something now. She was no longer reacting to the story. She was writing it. A month later, the headlines had changed. No longer screaming, "Billionaire CEO attacked." Now they read, Whistleblower Waitress turns tech ethics advocate. The Phoenix Drive is public. The world responds. Ayanna Cade, from server to systems watchdog. But Ayanna didn't read the headlines. She didn't need to. She felt them in the emails flooding her inbox, in the community groups asking her to speak, in the families reaching out with their own stories of loss, betrayal, and invisible harm. People who had once been silenced were now sending her their truths. Not because she was famous, but because she had listened. Her new life wasn't glamorous. No suits, no limousines, no VIP lounges. Just a modest office in a converted co-working space in downtown Atlanta, a second-hand desk, a laptop full of encrypted files, a sticky note on the wall that read, "Truth is a habit, not a moment." She called her organization Glassline. Transparent. Sharp. Protective. It wasn't just a watchdog group. It was a bridge between whistleblowers and tech experts, between regulators and real people. A place where stories were verified, vulnerabilities were exposed, and justice wasn't a headline, it was a process. Ayanna didn't run it like a CEO. She ran it like a server. She listened. She remembered names. She knew what people were carrying even when they didn't say it out loud. One afternoon, as she was reviewing a file about a new AI system quietly scraping biometric data from school security cams, her assistant knocked gently. "There's someone here to see you." Ayanna looked up. "Walk in?" The assistant nodded. Didn't give a name. Just said, "Tell her I was invisible once too." Ayanna smiled. "Send them in." That's how it went now. Strangers became partners, stories became cases, patterns emerged. And the system? It trembled just a little because for the first time, someone was watching back. She still got messages from Marcus. Not often. Not romantic. Just honest. Updates on the victim's fund, notes from his public testimony, one photo of a protest sign someone held that read, "If Ayanna hadn't stood up, we'd still be in the dark." She didn't frame it. She didn't need to. She was already living it. Sometimes at night, she'd sit on her apartment balcony, nothing fancy, just a fifth-floor view of the city and replay what happened. The restaurant, the blood, the betrayal, the choice. People said she was brave, but Ayanna knew better. She wasn't brave because she fought back. She was brave because she stood still when the moment demanded it, because she refused to believe that being underestimated was a reason to shrink. She was brave because she stepped into a story designed to erase her and rewrote it in permanent ink. The world didn't change overnight, but it noticed her. And in the spaces where that noticing turned into action, into law, into loud and uncomfortable questions, she saw the seeds. She watered them. Ayanna never claimed to have all the answers. She wasn't a saint. She wasn't a savior. She was a woman who once carried plates and endured whispers, who now carried proof and inspired questions. The kind of questions that didn't just shift narratives. They shifted power. That was her role now. Not to lead. Not to dominate. But to hold the light. To shine it wherever silence tried to grow. To walk into dark rooms and say, without flinching, "I see you." And to remind others they could do the same. Truth rarely announces itself with a bang. It shows up in quiet rooms, in overlooked voices, in people the world trains you to ignore. People like Ayanna. She wasn't born into power. She didn't have connections. No one handed her a platform. But she had something more dangerous than status. She had clarity. And the courage to use it. What happened at the Silver Lantern wasn't just a fight. It wasn't just an attempted cover-up or a CEO under siege. It was a mirror, held up to all of us. Because if a young black waitress can walk into a room full of violence, corruption, and history, and still choose integrity over fear, then what excuse do the rest of us have? We live in a world that's constantly whispering. Stay quiet. Don't push back. You're too small to make a difference. But that whisper? It's a lie. The truth is, systems don't change when people at the top suddenly grow a conscience. They change when someone at the bottom decides they've had enough. They change when a woman like Ayanna says, "Not on my shift." when she dares to believe her voice matters more than her title, more than her paycheck, more than her fear, and when she follows that belief with action. That's what this story teaches us. Not to wait for a hero in a cape, but to be the one who doesn't flinch, to step forward when it's easier to step aside, to hold your ground when it would be safer to disappear. The world needs fewer perfect people. It needs more honest ones. People who are tired of pretending they don't see what's broken. People who ask harder questions even when the answers come with consequences. People like Ayana, and maybe people like you. So if you're listening to this right now, ask yourself, where in your life are you playing small? Where have you accepted silence as the cost of peace? Where are you being underestimated and letting them be right? Because power doesn't just show up in politics or in boardrooms. Power lives in every choice you make. Every time you speak up in a meeting. Every time you stand up for someone else. Every time you refuse to laugh at the wrong joke. Every time you protect the truth, even when it would be easier to twist it. You don't need to know how the story ends. You just need to start living like it matters. Ayana didn't set out to be a hero. She just refused to be erased. And because of that, everything changed. Not perfectly. Not completely. But permanently. That's what courage does. And that's what you can do starting today. This story is part of our Black Story series here on Hidden Worth, where we share real, emotional, untold narratives of resilience, transformation, and unapologetic identity. If Ayana's journey moved you, if it made you think differently, if it made you feel seen, then don't just scroll past. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, share this with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice matters. And most of all, look in the mirror and ask, what part of my story is waiting to be told? Because someone out there needs to hear it. And maybe, just maybe, that someone is you.